Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming back to the Love and Betrayal channel. Today, I have a new and quite interesting story to share with you. The day she went silent. My daughter used to talk to flowers, to butterflies, to wind chimes when they danced in the breeze. She was that kind of child, a gentle soul with too many colors for this quiet world. But after that day, she stopped. It was a Wednesday when everything changed. The sun had been out, there was cereal on the table, she had her favorite yellow headband on, and then the scream. Not hers, mine. I remember dropping the plate in my hand. The crash, the sprint up the stairs, the sight of her standing in the doorway, her face pale, her mouth open, but no sound coming out. Just her tiny fingers pointing toward the crib, where her baby brother should have been. Gone. No break-in, no signs of struggle, no witnesses. Just an open window and an empty crib. The police swarmed the house. But they didn't bring him back. They didn't bring back her voice either. It's been 2 years. 2 years of therapists, of cue cards, of specialists who say things like selective mutism and emotional trauma response. 2 years of her sitting in her room with her drawings and not a single spoken word. The worst part? She doesn't cry. Not anymore. Like something inside her turned to stone. I tried everything. Music, color therapy, therapy animals. Nothing. Until the dog arrived. It was a rainy afternoon. I had just gotten back from grocery shopping. As I stepped out of the car soaked and exhausted, I saw him, a large shaggy mutt, coated in mud, sitting right at our front door. Like he belonged there. I'd never seen him before, no collar, no tags. Just these haunted brown eyes staring into mine. I shooed him away. Go home. He didn't move, didn't flinch. He just sat there, dripping and patient. I sighed and went inside. 15 minutes later, he was still there. I opened the door again, and there she was, Ava, standing behind me, her small fingers clutching the doorway, her lips still sealed, but her eyes still locked on the dog. He looked up at her, then stood, walked toward her, and instead of shrinking back like she usually did around anything new, she stepped forward. I held my breath. She reached out her hand. The dog sniffed it, licked it once, and she smiled. A full, radiant, glowing smile I hadn't seen since the day we lost Caleb. That night, he refused to leave. Curled up by our front door, rain still falling. I brought him a towel and some food. He didn't touch it until he saw Ava again. She fed him with her hands. He ate slowly, carefully, then sat by her side like he had always known her. I let him stay that night, put some blankets in the laundry room, and hoped he'd move on the next day. He didn't, and neither did Ava. The next morning, I found her sitting cross-legged beside him, holding one of her picture books, not reading aloud, but turning pages, pointing. And the dog sounded just watching us there. No barking, no restlessness, just stillness, presence, like he'd been waiting to find her. I called animal control that day. They said no one had reported a dog missing in our area. They offered to come pick him up. I said I'd call them back. I never did. That evening, I gave him a bath. Ava helped. She giggled softly when he shook out the water, soaking both of us. It was the first sound I'd heard her make in 2 years. I almost dropped the shampoo bottle. Later, when I tucked her into bed, then she pointed to the dog sleeping at her feet and looked at me. Then she mouthed him a word, not out loud, but clear enough for me to read it. Stay, I whispered. He's not going anywhere. But I was wrong, because nothing that mysterious stays long without purpose. And this dog, who seemed to come from nowhere, had a purpose I hadn't yet understood. He hadn't just come for Ava. He'd come for both of us. The first bark came 3 days after he arrived. Not a warning bark, not one of fear or territory, but something different. It was early morning. I was in the kitchen making toast, the light from the window still soft and sleepy. Ava was in the living room drawing, like always, with him curled up beside her like her shadow. Then suddenly he barked, just once, sharp, clear, and directed straight at Ava. I rushed in, heart racing. Is everything okay? Ava was staring at him. Her crayon paused midline. He was standing now, alert, tail still, eyes locked onto her drawing. I moved closer and saw what she'd drawn. It wasn't like the rainbows or butterflies she usually did. This was different. 2 stick figures. One small labeled me, the other labeled said Caleb. In between them, a crib and a dark scribble. Big, angry, chaotic. It looked like a hole. Ava pointed at the scribble. then at the dog. Then she whispered, barely audible, "He saw." I froze. Not just because it was the first time I'd heard her voice in 2 years, but because of the way she said it, like it wasn't just a sentence, it was a revelation. I knelt down beside her, trembling. "Sweetheart, what do you mean?" She didn't speak again, but she looked at the dog, and he looked back. Then he sat, pressed his body against hers, and gently licked the back of her hand. She smiled and whispered again, "He remembers. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed with my phone in my hand, staring at the only photo I still had of Caleb's nursery before everything happened. There had never been a break-in. The window had been open, but there were no footprints, no blood, no trace. The police had ruled it an abduction, but I had always wondered, how could someone take a child in under 5 minutes, past a toddler, with no sound, no trace? Unless someone else had already been in the house. I shook the thought away. Too cruel, too impossible. And yet, Ava's drawing wouldn't leave my mind. That dark scribble, that hole, and the dog's reaction to it. What did she mean he saw? How could he see anything? He hadn't even been with us then, had he? The next day, I called Ryan, the same child therapist who had worked with Ava during the early months. He had given up when she refused to speak or engage. But now, I had hope. "I need you to come see something," I said. He came by that afternoon, watched as Ava sat with the dog, who I'd started calling Shadow, and drew more and more pictures, each one more revealing. This time, a room, a mobile hanging above a crib, a shadowy shape near the window, and always the dog. "She's processing something," Ryan said, "something tied to memory, and this dog, he's a trigger, but in a good way. But she didn't know him back then." He gave me a strange look. "Are you sure?" I blinked. Of course, he just showed up a few days ago. Maybe not. Ryan pulled out one of Ava's earliest drawings, one she'd made a year ago during therapy. It was simple. A girl, a baby, and a dog. A big, shaggy dog with dark brown eyes and a torn ear. The same exact dog now sleeping on our living room rug. My skin went cold. "How's that possible?" "I don't know," Ryan whispered. "But Ava drew this before she stopped coming to sessions. She never explained it, just kept drawing it over and over. And now he's here." We both looked at Shadow. He opened one eye, looked at Ava, and thumped his tail once. That evening I sat with Ava while she colored. "Sweetheart," I asked gently, "do you remember the dog from before?" She didn't answer, but she picked up a yellow crayon, drew a sun over her scene, and nodded. I swallowed. "And Shadow is the same dog?" Another nod. "Did he come back to help?" She put her crayon down and said the longest sentence I'd heard from her in 2 years. "He was there when the bad man came, but I was hiding, and he stayed, and now he's back because he found me again." I didn't know what to say. The lump in my throat was too big to speak around, so I just hugged her, tight, and Shadow came over, pressing his head into her side. And for a moment, our broken world didn't feel so broken anymore. That night, Ava slept soundly for the first time since the day Caleb disappeared. Shadow curled beside her, and I stood at the doorway watching them, knowing deep in my bones that this was not just a dog. This was a witness, a guardian, a piece of a puzzle I hadn't even known I was still solving. And whatever secrets he carried, he had brought them back to us. The box was hidden behind Ava's bookshelf. I only found it because I was vacuuming her room while she played outside with Shadow. It was just an old shoebox, pink, a little dusty with stickers peeling off the sides. At first, I thought it was full of toys or random childhood trinkets, but when I opened it, my breath caught. Inside were drawings, dozens of them, all Ava's, but not like the colorful, cheerful pictures she left on the fridge. These were different. Dark, heavy, drawn in sharp black pencil with shaky hands and deep shadows. And every single one had him in it. Shadow, or rather, a dog that looked just like him. In some drawings, he stood in front of a crib. In others, he growled at a faceless figure near a window. And in one chilling image, he was bleeding. A jagged red crayon stroke slashed across his side, and Ava had written in her careful, childlike scrawl. He tried to stop him. My hands trembled. I looked at the next picture. This one was messier. A figure, tall, faceless, with what looked like a bag slung over one shoulder. Ava, drawn small, was hiding behind a door, and the dog, Shadow, stood between the figure and the crib. My heart dropped it. Had she seen someone take Caleb? Had Shadow been there and fought back? Why had she hidden these? Why had no therapist ever seen them? Why had I never seen them? And if she had drawn them back, then how could she have known what Shadow looked like before he even arrived? That night, I waited until she was in bed. Shadow curled up beside her as always. She fell asleep quickly, her hand tangled in his fur like a lifeline. I sat outside her room holding the box. At midnight, I heard the softest sound, paper crinkling. I peeked in. Ava was awake. She was drawing again, this time with red, yellow, and black crayons. I walked in slowly, knelt beside her. "What are you making, sweetheart?" She didn't answer right away. Then softly, "A memory." I looked down. It was the same room, our old nursery. The same window, the same crib. And again, Shadow barking, teeth bared, protecting. But this time, she drew a hand reaching toward the crib, and written next to it in shaky letters, "He had Daddy's watch." I froze. My chest clenched. I reached out slowly. "Ava, do you remember who took Caleb?" She looked up at me, then down, then whispered, "I thought it was Daddy, but he was at work, so I stopped talking." Tears welled up in my eyes. She believed that her own father might have taken her baby brother. And that guilt, that fear, it silenced her. I held her close, heart pounding. "No one blames you, Ava. You were scared. You were trying to protect Caleb." She nodded, then said something that shook me. "He dropped the watch when he ran. The dog bit him." My mind flashed back to that night. The police found nothing, no signs, no clues. But I remembered the watch, a gold men's watch. It had been found in the bushes near the edge of our backyard. We thought maybe it belonged to one of the officers who had searched the property. But what if it didn't? What if Ava had remembered it all this time and just didn't know how to say it? I picked up the drawing and stared at it. The man had no face. But the watch, it was drawn in red, almost glowing on his wrist. And the dog's teeth stained it with red, too. The next morning I called, and in the morning I called Ryan. Told him everything. He came over, saw the drawings, and sat down heavily on the couch. "I think Ava's trauma memory is coming back." He held one of the pictures in his hands, eyes scanning the scribbled corners. She saw something, and her brain did what it had to do, buried it. But now, she's remembering safely because of Shadow. We looked at the dog. He was lying beside Ava, tail thumping softly as she stroked his ears. "How is it possible," I asked, "that she imagined him, and then he appeared?" Ryan didn't have an answer. But then Ava looked up at us and said simply, "He followed me from the dark place." I walked over, knelt down. "What dark place?" She shrugged. "The one between dreams. I was alone. But he barked. He found me. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling thinking about that night 2 years ago. The sound of nothing, the stillness, and the gaping absence that swallowed our home. Could it be possible? Could Shadow have been there? A stray who witnessed it all and returned now to finish what he started? Or worse, was someone still out there thinking they got away? As if reading my thoughts, Shadow appeared at the bedroom door, silent, but alert. He stared at me with those deep brown eyes, then let out a low, protective growl. Not at me, not at Ava, but at the window. It started with a knock. Not loud, not aggressive, just persistent. 3 slow knocks on the front door. At 10:47 p.m. I had just finished tucking Ava in. She'd fallen asleep clutching Shadow, one hand resting over the locket I gave her that afternoon. Her first real smile in days. I thought it might finally be a peaceful night, but the knock shattered that illusion instantly. I froze in the hallway. Shadow was already on his feet. Ears up, hackles raised, a low growl vibrating in his chest like a warning shot. I crept toward the door and peeked through the peephole. Nothing. Just the empty porch and the swaying porch swing. But I knew what I heard. Shadow did too. Another knock. Same rhythm. Slow, measured, familiar. I whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. I flipped on the porch light. Still nothing. No footsteps on the grass, no retreating Shadow, just silence. Until Shadow lunged at the door, barking ferociously. The kind of bark I hadn't heard before. Not the bark of meeting Ava. Not the bark of play. This was rage, recognition. I locked every window, closed every curtain. Then ran back to Ava's room. She was sitting up now, eyes wide. She whispered. I sat beside her. "It's okay, just someone at the door." She looked at Shadow, who was now pacing the room like a soldier, then whispered, "He's looking for the watch." I blinked. "What watch, Ava?" She pulled something from under her pillow, something she'd never shown me before. It was small, metallic, scratched. A gold wristwatch. My heart stopped and, "Where did you get this?" Her hands trembled. "I kept it from the night Caleb disappeared." She pressed it into my palm. I saw it fall. When the man ran away, the dog chased him, bit him, he dropped it. Tears filled her eyes. I didn't want to tell anyone. I thought maybe Daddy sent him. I couldn't breathe. I hadn't seen this watch since that night. It looked exactly like the one the police dismissed, but there was something new. Etched on the back, barely visible in the glow of Ava's nightlight. To Jane, time never lie. Should never lie. J.H. Jack Holloway. My husband's former business partner. He had been over at the house a dozen times before Caleb was born. Always charming, always polite, always watching. I hadn't thought of him in years, until now. The next morning I called and I called Ryan, showed him the watch, told him everything. His face drained of color. You need to take this to the police. I did back then, I said. They logged a watch, but it was dismissed. No prints, no context. He pointed to the engraving. They need to see this. But I was afraid. Because if he really had been the one that night, and if he knew the watch was missing, that knock wasn't just a coincidence. It was a warning. That evening, I called the police anyway. They took the watch and reopened the report. But they couldn't promise protection without direct threat. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Shadow. He stood by the window, growling at shadows. And Ava, she didn't cry. She didn't hide. She just asked, will he come back? I couldn't lie. Yes, maybe, but this time we're ready. The next night we heard a scratch on the back door. Not a knock. A slow, scraping sound. Shadow bolted from Ava's room before I could even move. His bark was unlike anything I'd ever heard. Wild, savage. I grabbed my phone, called 911, and grabbed the bat from under my bed. I found Shadow snarling through the glass. And there, half hidden by the bushes, a man. Tall, gray jacket, face obscured by a baseball cap. He locked eyes with me and ran. The police came, searched the yard, found boot prints, a broken gate latch, but no sign of him. Still, the message was clear. He knew we remembered, and now he was afraid. After they left, I sat beside Ava's bed. She was awake, clutching Shadow like he was her armor. Mom? I looked at her, startled. She hadn't called me that in over a year. Yes, baby. She touched my face, her voice clear and small. I want to find my brother. 3 words. I want to find my brother. I never thought I'd hear Ava say that again. Never thought she'd speak his name out loud. But she did. With strength, with purpose. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just about healing anymore. It was about truth. And we were finally ready to face it. We started with the drawings. Every single one she had hidden. I laid them out across the living room floor like pieces of a crime scene. Shadow paced between them, slowly sniffing, pausing, resting near a few, almost like he knew what mattered most. One image made him whine. It was a drawing of the woods behind our old house. There in the trees, Ava had drawn a circle of rocks, a shape she labeled only with one word. Gone. I blinked. Thus, as the night, what is this? She sat beside me, small fingers tracing the image. He took Caleb there. I saw from the window. I swallowed hard. But how do you know it's real, sweetheart? She looked at me, clear-eyed, 'cause Shadow was wagging his tail beside the drawing, as if to say, follow her. We drove back to the old house the next morning. It was empty now. New buyers had backed out months ago, saying it gave them bad energy. I had never come back, not since the police packed up, not since the crib was gone. But today, we did. Me, Ava, and Shadow. She led us into the woods behind the property. With each step, my heart beat louder. Shadow stayed close, but alert, until Ava stopped. There, she whispered. A small clearing, overgrown but visible. And in the center, rocks, arranged in a perfect circle, too perfect to be natural. I knelt down. The grass was flattened, the dirt disturbed. Not fresh, but recent enough to matter. Shadow sniffed, whined, then dug. Not wildly, deliberate. Like he remembered. And after only minutes, he unearthed something. A small, dirt-covered stuffed elephant. Caleb's favorite. I fell to my knees. The toy was faded, but I knew that ear, that missing eye. It had been in his crib the night he vanished. Ava stood frozen. I saw him drop it, she whispered. The man. Tears streamed down my cheeks. I looked at Shadow. He barked once, then turned and began walking deeper into the woods. Not aimless, focused, like he knew what we had to see next. We followed, past broken trees, past a rusted fence line, until we reached a shed, one I didn't remember. It looked abandoned, falling apart, But Shadow walked straight to the door and scratched. Ava stood beside me, silent. I pushed the door open. It creaked like something in a nightmare. Inside, dust, mold, the sharp scent of damp wood. And in the corner, a shovel, stained, leaning against a child's blanket. I nearly collapsed. I grabbed the blanket and held it to my chest. It was Caleb's. Blue with little stars, still soft, still real. Not a ghost, not a dream. Shadow barked again, this time urgent. Ava grabbed my hand. He buried the truth here. We called the police. This time they listened. The evidence couldn't be ignored. The blanket, the toy, the location that Ava described, the name Jack Holloway etched on the watch. They reopened the case, this time for real. Over the next 2 weeks, they searched the area, used cadaver dogs, brought in forensic teams, and finally they found remains. Too small, too fragile, but the DNA matched. It was Caleb. He had never been taken across state lines. He had never left that night. He had been buried right here by someone who thought no one would ever return. I don't remember much of the press, the police briefings, the trial that followed, but I remember one moment when Ava stood in court and said, "He thought I didn't remember, but the dog did. He never forgot." Jack Holloway was arrested, sentenced, silence followed. And Ava? She spoke at Caleb's memorial, not in front of a crowd, but just me and Shadow. She placed a flower by the new stone we had made for him, then knelt and whispered, "You can sleep now, baby brother. We're not broken anymore." Shadow lay beside her, like always, and I finally saw it. This dog wasn't just part of our story. He was the story. The thread that pulled us through the dark. Later that night, Ava looked at me. "Do you think he's an angel?" I smiled. "Maybe." She laid her head on Shadow's back. "He's my angel." It had been 6 months since the trial ended. 6 months since Jack Holloway was sentenced, since Caleb was laid to rest, since Ava stood in court and broke a silence that once felt permanent. And now, we had found something close to peace. Not perfect, not forgetting, but living again. Ava spoke now. Not all the time. Not loudly, but enough. Enough to say good morning, to ask about breakfast, to tell Shadow he was the best dog in the whole galaxy, and sometimes late at night, to whisper Caleb's name with love instead of fear. One Saturday morning, I found her in the backyard with Shadow. They were sitting beneath the maple tree, where we'd planted flowers in Caleb's memory. She had a notebook in her lap, drawing again, but this time there were no shadows, no scribbles, no angry lines. Just faces, small, round, smiling. Children. I sat beside her. "Who are they?" She pointed to each one. "This is Maya. She's scared of the dark. This is Jaden. He used to talk, but then he stopped like me. This one's Lily. She cries when no one sees." I blinked. "These are your friends?" Ava shook her head. "There are kids at the center. Ryan takes me there now." "Yeah, to visit." I didn't know. Ryan must have taken her on one of their weekly therapy walks. But this was more than therapy. This was Ava giving back. That afternoon, I called Ryan. He explained everything. She connects with them in a way adults can't. He said they trust her, they see themselves in her. And Shadow? He laughed. He's basically the unofficial mascot now. Ava walks into a room and those kids light up because she doesn't ask them to speak. She just listens. Shadow does too. A week later, I visited the center myself, a small community space tucked behind the library. And I saw it. Ava sitting cross-legged on the floor, Shadow curled up beside her. Around them, 4 kids, all under 10, drawing, quiet, peaceful. One girl, Maya, handed Ava her picture, a messy heart drawn in green and blue. Ava smiled and whispered, "It's beautiful, just like you." The girl beamed. No words, just a hug. Tessa, the center's director, pulled me aside. "She has a gift," she said. "It's rare. Some of these kids have been in therapy for years and never opened up, but Ava just makes them feel safe." I felt my throat tighten. "She used to be one of them." Tessa nodded. "Exactly why she understands." Later that day, Ava and I sat in the car, Shadow curled in the back seat. She looked out the window and whispered, "I want to help more." I turned to her. "You already are." "No," she said, "I want to tell people that the silence isn't forever, that sometimes dogs speak louder than people." I smiled. "Then we'll find a way." We started small. Ava wrote her story, 1 page at a time, with drawings instead of paragraphs. Shadow beside her in every scene. We turned it into a book, The Dog Who Found My Voice. Ryan helped us print copies for the center, then the local library, Then a school counselor saw it and requested more. Soon Ava was invited to visit classrooms. She never gave speeches. She just read her book, sat with Shadow, answered questions. And when one boy asked, "Were you scared you'd never talk again?" she nodded honestly. But the dog wasn't scared. He waited. He knew I'd come back. The story spread. Not viral, not loud, but quiet and powerful, like Ava. One evening, I found a letter in the mailbox, no return address, just a folded piece of paper with a child's handwriting. "Dear Ava, my sister doesn't talk since our daddy left, but she smiled when she saw your picture with your dog. She drew a dog and named it Hope. Thank you. From Noah, age 9. I showed it to Ava. She read it, held it to her chest, then looked at Shadow and whispered, 'We're doing it, buddy. We're helping the quiet ones.' That night, she placed the letter in a little box beside her bed. Shadow curled at her feet like always. And before she drifted to sleep, she looked at me and asked, 'Do you think Caleb would be proud?' I kissed her forehead. 'He'd be in awe of you.' We turned off the light, and I sat in the hallway listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing and the comforting sound of Shadow's tail thumping twice against the floor, as if he was saying, 'Yes, he's proud, and I am too.' It started with a thank you letter from the mayor's office, printed on elegant stationery with gold trim, addressed not to me, not even to Ava, but to Shadow, to the four-legged hero whose presence brought healing, uncovered truth, and restored a child's voice. We thank you. You reminded us that sometimes the bravest hearts come with wagging tails. At the bottom, a formal invitation to a community honor ceremony. I stared at the letter, stunned. Ava giggled beside me. "Does this mean he gets to wear a tie?" I laughed. "I think it means he gets to be famous." She looked at Shadow, who was busy licking peanut butter from a spoon. "Do you think he'll like being on stage?" "I think he'll love the treats after." The day of the event, Ava was more nervous than Shadow. She picked out a little blue bow tie for him, the same shade as Caleb's blanket. She brushed his fur for nearly an hour. "He has to look like a hero," she insisted. "He already does," I said. The town hall was full that afternoon. Families, reporters, children from the center holding handmade signs. Shadow saved a life, our favorite therapy dog, the dog who helped us speak. When Ava walked on stage with Shadow beside her, the room went silent. Not because they didn't care, but because everyone knew they were looking at something bigger than words. A story that lived in Ava's soft steps, in Shadow's gentle eyes, in the space between trauma and triumph. The mayor took the mic. He spoke of courage, of resilience, of a little girl who helped reopen a case that had gone cold, and the dog who stood guard through it all. Then he turned to Ava and knelt. "Ava, would you do the honor of placing this medal?" She nodded. With 2 hands, she reached into the velvet box and pulled out a custom gold medallion that read, "For loyalty, courage, and healing, Shadow, a true hero." She clipped it gently around his neck. The room erupted in applause. Shadow wagged his tail once, then licked her cheek. And just like that, half the room burst into tears. After the ceremony, the kids from the center ran up to hug Ava. One boy, tiny, no older than 4, held out a crayon drawing. It was a picture of Shadow with angel wings. Ava smiled. "He doesn't need wings," she said softly, "but he already flies in our hearts." That night, we went home exhausted but glowing. Shadow's medal clinked gently as he walked around the living room, tail wagging, like he knew exactly what it meant. Ava placed the medal beside her bed, then pulled out her journal and wrote something in it. When I peeked later, I saw what she'd written. He never needed to bark loudly. He spoke in quiet ways, and I heard him. Weeks passed. The story made headlines in local news, then national. Silent girl finds voice through stray dog who solves cold case. The dog who brought truth home. Shadow even got a short feature on TV. He wasn't impressed, but Ava made sure he got extra belly rubs for enduring the camera. One afternoon, we received a call. The local K-9 unit wanted to meet Shadow, not to recruit him, but to honor him with a special badge. They said they'd never seen anything like it. A civilian dog solving a case detectives couldn't. We went to the station. They fitted him with a tiny honorary vest and pinned a badge with his name engraved, "Shadow, Guardian of Light." Ava cried. So did I. So did the officer handing out the badge, because this wasn't just about a dog. It was about hope. The kind you think is lost forever, until 4 paws and gentle eyes bring it back to your doorstep. That night, as we all curled on the couch, Ava whispered, "Do you think Shadow knows what he did?" I looked at her. "Maybe not in words, but he knows he's loved, and he knows he did something right." She nodded. "He saved me, and now I want to be like him." Like a dog? She laughed. No, like a safe place for someone else. Shadow lifted his head and laid it on her lap. A medal still hanging around his neck. A quiet hero. Still watching, still waiting for the next heart that needed saving. We never planned to foster other children. We never planned to open our home, our lives, our hearts to anyone but each other. But Shadow had other plans. It started with Maya, one of the little girls from the center Ava had been visiting. She was 5, tiny, trembled at loud noises, didn't speak unless Shadow was near. One day her case worker pulled me aside. She talks to Ava, not with words, but with drawings, the way Ava used to. I looked at the girl curled next to Shadow, stroking his ear with quiet reverence. She doesn't want to leave when visits end, the caseworker added. She calls your house the soft place. I felt something shift inside me. A whisper. S- Whisper. A nudge. Or maybe a bark. A month later, Maya moved in with us. Temporarily, they said. But when she unpacked her tiny suitcase and placed her crayon box beside Ava's, I knew. Shadow sat between them like a king in his court. And Ava? She took Maya's hand, smiled, and said the words I never thought I'd hear her say to someone else. It's okay, I didn't speak for a long time, too. He helped me. Word spread quietly. Ava's book made its way to more schools, more therapy rooms, then to trauma counselors, then to social workers. They didn't ask for donations, they asked for time. Can Ava meet this little girl? Can Shadow visit this boy? Would you ever consider fostering again? And somehow we did. One child, then another. Not all at once, not without heartbreak, but always with love. By the following year, our house had changed. The dining table got longer, the shoes at the door multiplied. Shadow's bed had to be replaced twice. It kept getting taken over by little hands that wanted to nap with him. Laughter returned, not just Ava's. Maya giggled now, too. Jaden, once silent, had started whispering to Shadow at night. I'd catch him curled up beside the dog, murmuring secrets only dogs can keep. I once asked Ava, do you ever miss the quiet? She smiled. The bad quiet? No. Then she looked at Shadow and added, but the soft quiet, the one where he laid beside me and waited, I still have that inside. Shadow aged, of course. His step slowed. His naps grew longer. But his heart? It never stopped working. Never stopped beating for the broken ones. One afternoon, we got a letter. This time from a national child advocacy group. They wanted to feature Ava and Shadow in a special exhibit. Ava agreed, and Cher said, on one condition. Include the other kids, the ones who came after. Shadow didn't just save me, he built us all. The exhibit opened with the title, Voices Found, the Dog Who Taught Silence to Sing. Photos, drawings, letters from children, audio of Ava reading her book accompanied by soft barks in the background. In the center, a sculpture of a dog, lying down, one paw extended, ears perked, waiting. Shadow passed away on a Sunday, peacefully, quietly, in his sleep, surrounded by kids who called him teacher, guardian, and best friend. Ava held his head in her lap. Maya kissed his nose. Jaden whispered, you don't have to protect us anymore. And I finally let the tears fall. Not because we lost him, but because we had found everything because of him. We buried him beneath the old maple tree, the one where Ava first started drawing again. They made a plaque. Shadow, the dog who heard what no one else could. He stayed until we were safe. Life moved on as it always does, but his presence never left. Every time a new child stepped into our home, Shadow was there, in the way Ava offered a hand, in the way Maya shared her bed, in the way laughter returned faster each time. We started calling it the Quiet House. Not because it was silent, but because it was the place where silence was respected and healed. Years later, Ava stood in front of her high school class and gave her first speech. About trauma, about healing, about a dog with brown eyes and a torn ear who waited for her to come back to herself. She ended it with, I thought I was broken, but I was just waiting to be held by something that didn't need me to talk. Shadow didn't teach me to speak. He taught me I didn't have to be heard. And in the audience, dozens of kids who had passed through our doors, now whole, now bright. And above them all, a banner with a single word. Forever. Because Shadow never left us. He just passed the torch and left behind the forever family he built. The end.